Hi there, I'm Tom, and this is a review of the Timemore Sculptors, the 078 and 064. These grinders are specifically designed with ghost burrs for filter and pour over. They are elegant, they are stylish. One of them is great, and the other is actually quite good. Let's find out which is which. Now, many of you will know that Timemore launched a Kickstarter campaign a couple of years back now with 4 grinders, the 078 64, which we're reviewing in this video. And there will be following a review of the 078S and the 064S, which are the espresso orientated grinders. Now, I'm mentioning that because if you see this review and then you see the others, you'll notice there is some duplication, which is inevitable, I'm afraid, because some of the styling is the same and a lot of the features are the same. So just hopefully you forgive me for that, but I did want to make sure I cover all the features and benefits in each of these 2 videos. So the Kickstarter campaign was one of the most successful in the history of coffee for Kickstarter. I think probably second only to the Meticulous, and Timemore raised something like $4 to $5 million US. And at the time of launch, these grinders were offered at a price that was just exceptional value. And Timemore delivered on those grinders actually in surprisingly quick time. I know some people get frustrated with delivery times on Kickstarter, but I think Timemore really did a great job of the launch and also ramped up production very, very quickly, certainly compared to just about every other grinder or espresso machine that's been offered on Kickstarter. I think they really set the standard. So these 4 grinders were sent to me. The 2 white ones here are the filter or brew grinders, these 60 grinders. The black ones are the 2 espresso grinders, which I'll be reviewing in a separate review as mentioned. So these are the 4 that were sent to me by Timemore. I get to keep them, I get to sell them to recover some costs of doing the reviews. So just bear that in mind. That's always part of the disclosure at the start of these things, whether I've paid for them or not. Lots of seasoning went into this, lots of dialing in, lots of playing and testing with light roasts, with medium roasts. I don't tend to do dark roast because pretty much every grinder is going to be pretty good at dark roast beans. So the profilings might vary, but I don't think you have to get quite as fussy with the darker the roast the bean, the less fussy you have to get about pretty much everything, but certainly grinders would be one of those everything. So here they are, ready to play, all seasoned, ready to get dialed in between the 2 decent DE1 XLs and the La Pavoni 2015 XO stuck in there as well. So I did a lot of work, a lot of playing around with these, and I think I got to know the grinders pretty well. I just want to give you a little caveat on what I'm going to tell you. That is, have a look at Lance Hedrick's review on these grinders. He's got some terrific stuff. Brian Quine did like a 2-hour video of these, swapping burrs in and out. So Brian Quine's worth checking out his channel as well. So what I'm saying is, don't just go on what I'm telling you. Make sure you check some other reviewers as well. I have certain preferences. We all have certain unconscious bias. It's really hard to set those aside, though we do try our best to do that. But this is what follows is my take on the 078 and the 064 sculptor grinders from Timemore. Our agenda today, a summary at the start as always, so you don't have to scroll to the end. The specs and key features in the grinder lab. We'll look at the grinders actually doing the grinding and the pouring, what I don't like, what I like the most, and who I believe this is best for. Summary, as I said, right up front, so you don't have to scroll to the end. And I'm going to review these grinders or assess them on aesthetics, workflow, filter coffee, and value, both for 078 and 064. Aesthetics, I think this is like something that was designed by Michelangelo in Venice. They're just beautifully elegant grinders, and by and large functional as well. We'll come to that in a moment. Workflow, they're good. They're not great. They're not bad. A little bit clunkiness with the lids. There's a little bit of a squinting has to be done with the dials. So I'm giving them 3 out of 5. Workflow is not something I personally value too highly. I don't mind if there's a little bit of faffing around so long as the in the cup result is excellent. That's number 1. Aesthetics is number 2 for me. Workflow is number 3. So what are they like in the cup? Let me give you the summary up front. 078, 5 beans out of 5. 064, 3 beans out of 5. The 078 burrs, the ghost burrs, are exceptional. They're world-class. They're right up there with the Pietro M models that Lance Hedrick helped Fiorenzato develop. They're up there with the VS6 Gold, Supernova Gold burrs. They are absolutely world-class. And whatever you do not swap the burrs out of the 078 because I think there's a very good chance you're going to be disappointed. A lot of people think that stock burrs must be inferior to, say, aftermarket burrs such as Lebrew or SSP, and sometimes they are, but in this case, they're definitely not. If you wanted to swap the 064 burrs out, well, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, but they might be, so there might be some justification about to do that. I just found for me that the body in the 064 Burrs was too much. Some of you are going to prefer more body, particularly if you're into, say, a medium or darker roast beans for your filter coffee. You're probably going to want that extra body. But for me, I'm favoring for filter coffee, light roast beans or even cinnamon, which is a little lighter than light. And for me, the 078 really shines with clarity and subtle flavors and balance, very smooth, etc. So just my take. As I said, do listen to other reviewers and see what they think of it. Value, I think 5 out of 5 beans for the 078. You'd be looking to get a VS6 with the Supernova Gold Burrs to match it. As I mentioned, the Pietro M model Burrs, which are kind of hard to get these days in certain parts of the south of the world, are also up there with it as well. But I think the pricing for the 078, given the premium quality of the components and given the exceptional clarity in the Burrs, I think it's well justified. The 064, not quite so much. I think you have other options at the current price range, and this recording it in April 2025. Prices might vary in the future, but right now, I think there are better value options, but it's still a good grinder. So 3 beans out of 5 represents, this is not bad, this is not great, it's okay. So I wouldn't not buy the grinder simply on that basis. So in summary, if you want clarity and you want an end game grinder that's going to be durable and last a long time, 078 is a great pick. If you favor more body in your filter coffee and you don't mind a little bit of compromise on the quality of the componentry, then the series 068 will serve you well for many years, but just know that you are going to get a lot more body in that filter coffee. Here are the 2 burrs at the heart of each of the grinder, the 078 and the 064. They are very different burrs. They do deliver in the cup quite a distinctly different filter coffee. You can see here, now these were developed in conjunction with, the 078 was developed in conjunction with a company called Grinder Labs. You see it's a ghost burr. You see 3 rows of teeth there. And I believe that's the key, likely the key to deliver such excellent clarity in the cup. There is a little video which I thought was fantastic. It's been put out by Timemore. Now, Timemore, you just buy the grinder, you take it out of the box, and you think, yeah, that's a really nice grinder. But there's a lot behind the scenes around the culture, the vision, the passion, the values, the standards that the founder, the leaders of the company are imbibing or imbuing, if you like, with everything that happens behind the scenes that you don't get to see when you open that box. So I thought a little bit of a peek behind the scenes might be quite worthwhile. So let me start this video from Timemore. And this is actually where they do. This is their labs. This is not some marketing hype. This is their factory. Start with over 100 tons of premium stainless steel, creating precision burrs from that raw steel. I mean, I just love this stuff. I'd love to go to the factory and have a look at this. But these are not just, this is, of course, it's a marketing video, but this is actually inside their factory. Everything you see here is real. It's not just made up for the sake of the video. So you can see how clean everything is, how well organized everything looks. And the end result is, I think, something that's a little bit special. It's really worth watching because it does actually bring across some of the ethos behind the grinders. Specs and features, we'll have a look at them both side by side, the 078, 064. Weight 6.5 versus 4.1. Burr type, both flat ghost burrs, 78 and 64 mil, auger fed vertical orientation burrs. Stepless on the 078, stepped. They are big steps on the 064. I don't think that's a big deal because it's filter coffee. If it was an espresso grinder, that would be a problem. And the 064S is actually stepless. Motors, you do notice a big difference, 400 watt, both brushless, 150 watts. So 800 to 1400 RPM. I always just have it dialed down at the 800, the lowest possible on the 078, and down to 800 on the 064. So you can use the dial. It's at the back of the grinder, but you can use it to flush the last part of the grounds out. But as I said, I just have them set on the 800, and that's fine. I do suspect that the lower RPM spinning around will create a few less fines. So that's the summary between the two. you do really notice the difference between the one from the other in terms of the heaviness and the feel and the motor, the power, etc., from one to the other. But as I said, if you're on a bit of a budget and you like medium body, there's nothing wrong with the 064. It's a good grinder. I just don't put it in the category of being a great grinder. Some of the main features is you've got this little, what do you call, fines cleanser, it's a little circular dial where, so when you've done your ground, you just give that a little flick. I'll show you how it's used in a moment when we get to the grinder lab. But it is designed to collect fines specifically, which in the case of these two grinders where we're not wanting to get fines in with the coffee, in which you do want some with the espresso to create some resistance when the water comes in, it works quite well. The testing I've done would indicate that it's not going to make a big difference in the cup unless you have the taste buds of a World Barista Championship judge. So I do like the design. It's very sleek. It's got a very small gap between this magnetic dosing cup which sits on there and the dosing chute. So you don't get any spray going anywhere, which is cool. The dial, the RPM dial is clear, easy to use. It is unfortunately the back of the grinder. That may change in future editions, I suspect, because they do get a fair bit of feedback as to why did you put it around the back where I can't actually see it, and it's kind of hard to get to. For me, it's not a big deal. I'd kind of rather have it around the back for the filter ones. The espresso is a little bit different. I might be adjusting it. But for these grinders, I'm just going to have it at the lowest RPM because it's filter coffee, and I think that's probably the better way to do it. So no biggie from my point of view, but for some of you who like playing around with the RPM, it could be a bit of a pain in the butt. It's a brushless motor, as I mentioned before, and this is how it came packaged. It came very, very nicely packaged. And one of the things that we'll unpack, pardon the pun, a little bit later on, is how much care and attention Timemore go to. It's the only box I've received where on the outside you've got these little plastic feet that just mean that if the box gets dropped, it's not going to be damaged quite as much. I'm not sure they're necessary, but I do like them because it tells me that Timemore is making effort over small details. And I just think this keeps coming through time and time again, pardon the pun again, with my experience with Timemore. Okay, let's have a look in the grinder lab, and a big shout out to Monastery.coffee. The Monastery Coffee is in South Australia, in South Australia, in Australia, in Adelaide, and they do produce some of the consistently best light roast coffee beans, and fortunately they're a sponsor. They send me a kilo bag once a month to do work in the grinder lab like this. You can see that they are fairly light roast beans. They're actually a cinnamon category, so slightly lighter than light, which is what I prefer. This is a cup just in front of the two grinders. We can probably forget that, but here, let's go to the grinder lab and have a look at, step out of the way, have a look at the two grinders in action. Now, this is a 5 times normal speed. This is an Ethiopian light roast. As always, I have the equalizers there, which is the Lazy Susan. And we're putting in 22 grams of beans into the 078 and the 064. And I'm using the Filter 3 baskets that developed by Scott Rail of Prodigal Coffee. Also just a premium roast coffee bean supplier. And into the basket they go. And we're just making sure that we start them both at the same time so that when the pour is finished, they'll be finished at the same time. And therefore they're going to be the same temperature, because the flavor you get from coffee does change. It's actually a little bit more flavorsome as the coffee cools. So this Filter 3.0 on the decent takes a good 3.5, 4 minutes for the pour. One of the beauties of it is that it'll flush some water into the basket and let it seep and pour through slowly. And then it'll flush the next into the basket and let it pour and seep slowly. So here there are. We've finished the pour into the two cups, which are marked left and right underneath. I don't know which is which. I just have the grind blind taste compare log in front of me. And I'm going to do my slurping and disgusting thing where I spit things out while my wife is out of the room. If you did want a copy of these logs that I used to do your own blind taste testing, go to the website www.tomsgrinderlab.com and look for the free stuff. I've got my notes. It was pretty clear cut, but I did this blind taste testing 3 times. And the right one pointing to the 064, the left one was actually coincidentally from the left-hand grinder, which was the 078. I did it again with a Colombian light roast bean. This time I've really sped it up because you get the idea of how I'm actually doing it, 25 times normal speed. So this was the second grind blind taste compare. And I did it the third time, and there are the results. Now let me read this out for you. Ethiopian, Colombian, and Peruvian. 3 different beans. You can press pause and analyze this all you like, but essentially the 078 won the Ethiopian, won the Colombian, won the Peruvian beans. 078 delivered clarity in the cup with more sweetness. 064, body is strong, but not subtle. And this comes back to the spectrum that I talk about, where every coffee in the cup, the espresso or the filter, is going to be positioned on a spectrum from the one hand, strong flavor, and to the other, subtle flavor. And subtlety is where people talk about clarity, talk about layers, talk about different flavor notes. Strong, bold, chocolate, toffee, caramel is what you want for when you're having a milk-based espresso with darker roasted beans. So that's the blind taste test. Clear winner for me, with the clarity, with the sweetness, with the smoothness of the flavor, was the 078. This is the clackers that I was telling you about. This is a sort of a better view of them in the grinder lab. You can see how they operated. And for those of you who notice there's a few chips on the top of the cup for the 078, my bad. Put it in the dishwasher. Don't do that. You can see it's bubbled down the side here. I don't know if you can see that or not, but yes, you're quite okay to wash them under a tap, but just don't put them in the dishwasher. And by the way, a little tip for you. If you want a bit more flavor in your filter coffee, this is what you can do. Get yourself a milk whisk, aerate it. People do this with wine, apparently. And it does bring out a little bit more flavor. And oh yeah, make sure you subscribe for more tips. But this is what I do. This is a little nano foamer, the lithium white version. I got the white version simply because it looks nice. And that's what I have on my filter bench, just ready to give it a little bit of aeration. And as I said, a little bit of flavor comes out. So having used that fines user, what I did is I measured the amount of extra grounds that the fines cleanser, as they call it, gets out. It's 0.03 of a gram. Now, just to be clear, this is not 0.3 of a gram. It's 0.03 of a gram, practically nothing. Now, for me, I just use the clacker, the fines remover, because this amount in 300 ml of coffee, I'm not going to notice the difference. If you're a world barista champion or a judge, maybe you would. I kind of doubt it. So for me, I just use the fines remover to get the fines out of the coffee grinder, and I'm not too worried about the fact that it might end up being a few more fines actually in the coffee, because I just don't think it's going to make any difference. So what don't I like? It's not a lot. One of my bugbears is that the dial is really hard to see if you face on. If you're around to the side, you can see the little red mark at the side. So what I did is, if you go to Etsy and look up, Sculptor 078 or 078S, if you got one of those, and you can buy these little tiny magnetic things that just clip on the front. That's the 78S version. You can see here, this is the 078 version. I don't think you can get them for the 064s, but you can see the difference. It's just this little red mark at the side. So you literally have to look around the side, and it's not that easy to line it up. These things make a hell of a difference. And I'm hoping that when version 2 comes out, Timemore, if you're listening, that something like this is actually included on both of them, because it is a little bit of a bugbear, and it's one of the reasons I marked the workflow down just a little bit. RPM dial, as I said, is at the rear. Not a problem for me, but if you want to play with it a little bit, because I just set them both to 800, if you want to play with it a little bit, it could be a bit of a bugbear. Again, something Timemore might look at in version 2. I've got this photo here. You can see that this is the 078. It's the taller of the two cups, weighing at 172 grams. The 064, 57 grams. So there's a really massive difference in the weight of the two cups, and I do think that that is symptomatic of the different quality. I did the same thing with the lids, 54 grams versus 25 grams. Yes, it's a smaller lid, but it's not kind of half the size of the lid. So definitely lighter quality. One of the reasons, of course, is that the 078 has a magnet in it, which I think is pretty useful. If you turn them upside down, a couple of things you'll see here. One, there's a magnet on the 078, which does make it lock in a little bit better. Nothing on the 064. Again, that might be improved with another version. If I was Timemore, it would be something I'd be looking at, because I don't think it would cost much to do that. I asked Timemore about Burr swapping, and what they told me is that it will not invalidate the warranty unless you install the new burrs incorrectly, which I think is actually very fair and also very good at Timemore. You do require some technical ability if you want to swap the burrs out. For the love of God, do not swap the burrs out of the 078, because they are really exceptional burrs, and I think it'd be a great shame to do that. 064, you might want to try SSP or LeBrew or something like this. Maybe you've got to balance up ease versus form. You've got to balance up the ease or lack of ease in doing this with the Timemore sculptures versus the form. If you love the form of the 064 and you really like that design, is what I'm saying, then yes, it might be worth going through the pain of swapping the burrs out. Otherwise, I would tend just to buy a DF64 Gen 2 or something like that and use that. A lot easier to swap the burrs out. What I like the most? Well, there's a lot. I just love the look of these grinders. I think they're a beautifully designed grinder, both of them. I really like the 078 Burr. I just think it makes some of the best filter coffee that I've enjoyed. And I do like the fact that they come with these stickers on them that show you what the range should be for espresso, mocha, and pour over, how to use the lid so that it's ergonomically a bit more friendly. And also there's a really cool thing they do with the QR code, where you scratch the code and you come up with a confirmation that the product that you've bought are genuine Timemore products and not a ripoff, which is unfortunately is becoming more and more common. A little sticker on the back. And again, love this. It's normal for some left coffee fines inside due to factory grinding tests. In other words, when you get a grinder from a company and it's new and you see there's some grounds left in there, this is good news, not bad news. It means that the company has been testing the grinder and sure, there's a few little stray grounds that have been left in there. So again, kudos to Timemore, because this is something that I've been asking grinder manufacturers to do for quite some time, because people pay a good money, they get a new grinder, and then they open it up and they find some grinds and they think, they've sold me something that's been a demo model, or they've sold me something that's secondhand. Probably not. Probably just a very, very careful manufacturers wanting to make sure that the burrs are nicely aligned and the grind is producing good coffee. It takes a fair bit more time for a company like Timemore to do this. So kudos to them for leaving a few coffee grounds in there as evidence of the fact that they care about the grinder arriving to you in very tip-top shape and working condition. One of the little surprise things that I liked about, what surprised me as I used the grinders, is the ability to just slip my hand down the side here for the on-off button. A lot of grinders have the on-off buttons at the side of the grinders, and if it's near the rear, then it might be butting up next to an espresso machine or another grinder. Sometimes my espresso bench is looking a little crowded. So it's really nice not to have to kind of battle at the side here with whatever's sitting next to it. So that's something I think is a plus. Who's it best for? If you value beauty, then these grinders, I think, are very beautiful grinders. If you appreciate attention to detail, Timemore have gone to great pains to demonstrate that they pay attention to detail. If you want perfect balance, clarity, and body, for me, the 078 is one of the top 3 Burr sets that I've had the pleasure and privilege of using for filter coffee. To me, it's an end game filter grinder chaser's dream. If you need a slim footprint or you have low cabinets, and if you place value on the things that you can't see that are happening behind the scenes, I can assure you that Timemore is an impressive company for a belief in their mission, being clear on their vision. It's an incredibly well-structured company with their KPIs and milestones, looking to have a new product that's going to be in demand in the market, released every quarter. These sorts of goals and milestones, and they have the people in place to make these things happen as well. The caring people, the knowledgeable people, the technically very skilled. So I think the company behind the grinders, there's a little bit of value in that as well. So I think if you're one of these people that appreciate that like I do, then that's part of the value you buy into when you secure a Timemore Sculptor. That's it from me. Be sure to head over to Tom's Grinder Lab because there is a guide waiting there for you on how to optimize your espresso. Hope to see you at the next review. And make sure you subscribe and share. Cheers.